guess what I'm going to ask you about, and which manager who might be feeling a little pressure at this point. I'll give you one guess.
Is this going to be deja vu all over again?
I feel like we've had this conversation about 7 times at least with you.
Yeah, Erik ten Hag. Yeah,
you go.
Let's go there straight away. I don't think it's an unfair question as to which of these managers is under the most pressure. And funny enough, if you actually go away from the players or the managers' press conferences, you'd have to say the noises coming out of both clubs' executives is actually very, very confident. Omar Barada, the Manchester United chief executive, he's talking about the rebuilding, and he's targeting the year 2028 for them to once again be challenging for the top honours in the game, the Premier League and the Champions League. Apparently it's even given the code name, Project 150, because it would be the 150th anniversary of the club's foundation. So he's buoyant, he's confident. And Daniel Levy, the Tottenham chairman, who earlier this week, a fans forum, said very happily, with a big smile on his face, we've got our Tottenham back. So the upper echelons of both clubs, as I said, seem to be extremely buoyant. The results and performances, particularly so far this season, would tell you otherwise. I mean, they've both, since April, they've both only won 5 Premier League games. This is 10th versus 11th this weekend. But it is a significant game, and it would be a huge boost for either if they can get a win.
Geoff, imagine you're taking a trip across the Atlantic Ocean, and you've heard about the waves that the Manchester United ship is traversing, and you've heard about the tempest that the Spurs boat is going through. Considering the context, which ship would you get on to make it all the way across the Atlantic?
Well, for a start, I'd make sure I had a decent life jacket with me, Nico. I wouldn't actually fancy getting on either of those boats right now, because they both have their own problems, and they are, if you like, they're not that dissimilar. Manchester United just do not score enough goals. It's simple as that. They're getting decent chances, but they're not taking chances. Once again, in the last week, we've had Erik ten Hag have to come out and defend Marcus Rashford. Although this game could be ideal for him because Tottenham are vulnerable to conceding goals on the break. The quick turnover, that often seems to be their Achilles heel. Tottenham, yes, they're exciting going forwards, but again, they won last night, Carabao, 3-0 they won. That sounds really, really comfortable. It wasn't. They gave up chances. They give you chances. They pushed so high up to the halfway line. That's where teams get chances in behind them. I know Mickey van der Ven has incredible pace, but they will give you chances. And also, Tottenham's record on the road is astonishingly bad. Astonishingly bad.
Spurs fans were so unhappy with the way that they were playing with Conte. It was boring. It was so defensive. It was almost too much. Almost
all those
to
things
one
were
extreme.
true, though.
And this is the irony. They went to the other end of the spectrum, so exposed. So why can't we meet somewhere in the middle and then not play so risky? So I don't know, Geoff. I don't even know what to make of this. It's like, sure. Like, is it sustainable?
As we look at the narratives, there's a lot of pressure on both of these coaches. They're both on the hot seat. Whose seat do you think is hotter?
Well, I'd say by definition, because of the size of Manchester United, Alexis, because there's always going to be pressure in that club. You could come second with Manchester United in the Premier League. If that was after a period of sustained success, then you'd say that is the more pressurised job. You've also got relatively new owners, albeit minority owners. So it's, I'd say it's the Manchester United job.
I don't know if you've noticed in a lot of the photos we're showing, Ruud van Nistelrooy is right in that background, waiting for his turn.
Yeah, it's just, I don't think he's waiting for his turn because he was brought in by him. He was a great striker as well.
It would be regicide at its greatest expression.
You mean Ruud van Nistelrooy Brutus?
I think that he's... I think there's an unwritten rule, isn't there? You don't take the place of a manager if that manager brought you in. And, I think the other things as well, like they say in football, it's when you're not getting the chances, when you're not taking the chances, that is exactly when you've got a real big problem. They're getting the chances. Again, now my seriously dubious stats department, Bruno Fernandes apparently has had more shots without scoring than anybody else in Europe, 17. Now, those goals start going in, then Manchester United are a very different team, aren't they?
Yeah, very much so. And I love that stat because in some of the matches, you just watch and you're just frustrated by the lack of production between he and Joshua Zirkzee. Sticking in the city of Manchester, I want to talk about Manchester City, who travel up north to go to Newcastle, which has proved to be, let's say, a competitive match or tricky place to go, St. James's Park, under Eddie Howe in the last couple matches they faced each other. No Rodri. How does Pep Guardiola cope with life without his talismanic midfielder?
Well, I don't think he's got another midfielder that is of the same makeup as him. He can change things around. I mean, the most obvious person is put the Gundogan in there. And, he'll more than do a job for you. And perhaps against Manchester City, then against Newcastle United, it's a different challenge playing without Rodri. So I think they'll cope okay. I think they've got options. Don't forget John Stones can push in as well. You've got Rico Lewis too. I mean, Pep is such a good coach. He can coach many players who are normally or used to playing in a formal or normal position to fill in there for him. But it was noticeable last week, the difference between Manchester City when Rodri was on the pitch and when he went off. And that was when it was 11 versus 11. You can't understate really how important Rodri is to Manchester City. But also, you then got to go to the mental side of it. Look, he's not available. He's not there. So get used to it and get used to it quick as well, because the Premier League is unforgiving. Newcastle United, you just don't know what you're going to get on the day. We know about the crowd, but obviously they don't play in the game. And they've had a strange week as well, because they were absolutely awful at Fulham last week. And Eddie Howe pretty much said so. They were terrible. And then their game in midweek in the Carabao against Wimbledon, AFC Wimbledon, was postponed due to a huge swallow hole opening up on the pitch. We had a torrential downpour. The pitch wasn't unplayable. There was a massive hole in it. So they've had, if you like, extra time to train. They've had a bit of a rest. They've had time to digest where and how and why it went so badly wrong against Fulham. And I think they'll be looking for a reaction against that. So, look, no, of course you fancy Manchester City going into it. No games are given in the Premier League. But I think Newcastle United will want to provide a response to last week's poor display.
Geoff, one of the matches that I'm super intrigued by tomorrow is Chelsea-Brighton. Two new managers that are having a huge amount of success with their clubs. What are you anticipating in this one? Who do you think has the edge?
I think it's going to be a really tactical game, Suze. I think you've got two managers who very much they think deeply about the game. They're not afraid to do something different. And they're also, in their own way, both proving that, or if you like, trying to get their message across to their players, because neither have been with their groups of players for that long. They've both come in this season. So we know that they are still bedding down, but we're starting to see some. I mean, I've been really impressed with Fabian Hürzeler. I think he's bright. He's not afraid to do things that are completely different, and he's not afraid to take the game to the opposition. He's not cowed by reputation. And he certainly doesn't act like, we all talk about his age. He doesn't talk like a youngster or an apprentice, none whatsoever. Chelsea just starting to click, aren't they? And in Jackson and Cole Palmer, what a fabulous duo they have there. But strangely enough, haven't won at home this season. So they'll be looking to put that right as well. I think that'd be a really good football game, if you like. I know that sounds obvious. It sounds a cliche. But I expect it to be a decent game.
Is he the first Gen Z coach?
Gen Z.
Is he?
No, he's not Gen Z.
No. He's 31?
No, I'm 30. I'm millennial. I'm at the very end of millennial.
He just squeaked in.
We will have in 2-3 years. The next Hürzeler will be Gen Z.
Nice.
Wow, crazy.
Wow, that is wild.
We're not far away. I'm looking forward to it, because in my advanced years, obviously I've interviewed lots of players and I've interviewed players' sons who then become players. I'm waiting on for my first granddad experience. It's going to happen to me soon.
Learn the word skibbity now.
Well, that's wild. Geoff Shreeves, great stuff as always. Thanks so much for taking the time. We'll catch up with you next week, all right?